Welcome. This is Eric L. Dunavant, the Mindset Disruption Strategist. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Redefining Success. And I could not be more excited about my guest today. Today, I've got Kraig Bougher,
Yes, you got it.
who is the Vice President of Xtreme Recognition. But Kraig and I got connected because of a movement that God put on his heart. And I'm looking forward to him kind of telling more about this, the Ignite Christian Business Conference that's coming up in late July this year for Christian business owners in the Midwest and Nebraska. And I'm excited for him to talk more about that, being able to get together with other people who are also redefining success, being in a room full of people who have that mindset. So it's just going to be a great visit today. So Kraig, thank you so much for being here and joining me.
Eric, it's going to be fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Kraig, if you've listened to the show, we kind of always start it the same way, which is we're hanging out. It's a good, beautiful afternoon. We're in my backyard. I've got some burgers and hot dogs on the grill, and I've invited you over and all my friends are here. So if you would you please introduce yourself to my friends?
Wow. It's great to be here. Kraig Bougher. The company is Xtreme Recognition, and it's something that been since 91 is really when we started. And really it was just the recognition end of it. So we would put together recognition programs, incentive programs. And throughout the years, it was just a short period of time. I was actually with a company called Jostens. You remember the class ring company? So they had a recognition division at the time. And I was on board with them and really didn't care for the direction that they were going, and left there, went on my own, and was just putting recognition programs together, safety award programs, those type of things, and helping keep employees longer, helping, bring employees on to companies and businesses. And later on, a few years after that, I had a gal come to me. She was an HR director, and she goes, you know what? They have me in charge of the company picnic. I don't know what I'm doing, but they're calling it an employee benefit. So they dumped it on human resources. Can you help me? And of course, I'm a sales guy, right? And I said, oh, I can help you. What do you need? She goes, well, they want t-shirts and Frisbees and all kinds of these giveaways. And I don't know what I'm doing. I said, well, I can get it for you. I had no idea what I was doing. No idea. That's not what we did. Yeah. And so I got my wife, and I says, can you help me with this? And she's a fighter, she's a scrapper, and away she went. She found a way to do it. And we kind of had many falls along the way trying to figure it out. So the next thing you know, we're in the promotional product arena, so doing anything with a logo onto the apparel come along with, and adding logos to apparel, all those different things. So been doing it a long time, and no one really taught us the ropes. We just kind of learned the hard way. And next thing you know, we're doing company stores and some big programs. And it's just, it's been a lot of fun. It really has. I mean, we've had our ups and downs, don't get me wrong, sure, but it's been fun. We've learned a lot. We've grown a lot. And here we are, we've built up this business, and put Christ first. And it's been a ride. It's been a ride.
So you said that last, but I'm going to kind of come back to it. So putting Christ first inside of the business, is that something that came intuitively to you, or how did that kind of, how tell me a little bit about that awakening or observation or journey?
Yeah. Eric, I've been a believer all that time, and I wouldn't necessarily say that, I was an on fire believer for, I took my stand for Jesus. I would say I was a believer, but yet at the same time, I really didn't have that relationship with Jesus. And I knew him. I grew up in a family that, we went to church every Sunday, and I know that my mom and dad loved the Lord, but at the same time, I didn't have that relationship with Jesus Christ. Yeah. And that came from many failures, many bad decisions in my own life, where I found myself at the very bottom.
Mm.
And I had such a caring, loving, God-fearing wife in my life that she didn't show me the love of Jesus. She lived it. I mean, she didn't tell it to me. She showed it to me.
Yeah.
And I found out that love of Jesus, that forgiving, that mercy, that grace that he shows. And that's when I discovered that relationship, that heart relationship with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really changed my life. And even another step, Eric, was going through this recent whatever you want to call it that everyone went through, and this pandemic. And I realized that I heard a conversation one time, and someone was talking about their belief in Jesus, and another person was sitting right next to them, and they looked over and said, wow, that's great. I didn't know you were a believer. And I thought to myself, man, is that me?
Yeah.
And
wow.
if someone tells that to me that I've been working with for years and years, I just think maybe I haven't done something right. Maybe I haven't lived my life right. And looking back at this whole pandemic, I had a pastor that through all of this, he stepped up and talked about truth through all of this pandemic.
Yep.
And basically put his ministry on the line every Sunday, every midweek service, every time he went online. And I just said, man, that's a man that doesn't fear man, but he has the fear of God all over him. And I said, I want that in my own life. And I said, that's when I said, you look at the world that we're in, and I'm kind of throwing a bunch of things in here,
sure.
but I look back at this whole thing. That's what this whole Ignite thing, that's how this whole Ignite thing started. Because there's I look at it's the leadership that is failing.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking Republican, Democrat. I'm talking leadership.
Yep.
And the lack of, and I look at the best leaders that are out there today, Eric, they just so happen to be Christian business owners, entrepreneurs, business leaders, kingdom-minded people. Those are your leaders.
Yeah.
And if we can get a hold of those leaders and help them to see outside the box that we built around our businesses, not even on purpose did we build those boxes, but it's like, because we're going through this and we're in survival mode.
Yep.
And so we built these walls up, and we don't even know what's going on in our own community anymore, because we want our business to survive. And we shouldn't be in that survival mode anymore. We should be thriving as believers, as spirit-filled believers. We should be thriving. And that's what built this whole thing about Ignite, because it's time that we look above that small, the four walls of that box that we built. We look above that, and you think about Nehemiah. Eric, think about Nehemiah. I can never read the book of Nehemiah, and I get stuck in that first chapter, and I'm stuck there, because it said when he found out the condition of his city, he wept for days. Eric, I've never wept for Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that take to get to that and have that kind of passion for my community, for my city? And we're talking about changing a nation. How do we change a nation without changing our community, without changing our city, before we change our nation? And it's got to start here. It's got to start with us.
Yeah.
And all I'm trying to do is ignite the business leader, ignite the entrepreneur, ignite the people that I think are the best leaders here. This isn't a conference. It might be a conference to make people into leaders, but I'd rather take those leaders and make them, instead of good leaders, let's make them great leaders. Let's make them people that aren't afraid of man and say what's truth, because we're hit so hard day to day about being politically correct, what we're supposed to do in the workplace, and how we're supposed to, say certain things. and I don't want to align my values with man. I want to look at the word of God and say, this is how I'm going to build my business. And this is where I'm going to start.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the foundation. And when you start to look at that, it's like a light turns on, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is how we're supposed to build our businesses from the very get-go, that foundation. And this is how we're supposed to live our lives. And you've talked about in the times that you and I've got to know each other, talking about marriages, and man, the marriage and the business, even that is hand in hand.
Yeah.
We get so buried in the business and if we're doing things the way Christ wants us to do it, he's going to take care. He's going to let us know, hey, our spouse comes before the business,
right?
He comes before the spouse. Is supposed to be Christ, our spouse. And then everything else will kind of go right into place.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't think we do it intentionally, but it happens because we get in that mode where we've got to survive. We've got to survive. We've got to do this and that. And hard work is good. Don't get me wrong, Eric, because you go on the other side and people call themselves believers and you look at what they're doing. It's like, dude, are you going to work today? I mean, what are you doing?
Right.
I mean, so it's like, it's like these two different extremes that we live in here. And I look back at the pandemic, and God is so good, Eric. God is so good. My wife, you'll have to interview her sometime. I mean,
well, we may need to do that.
That's the person you need to talk to. She's on fire, and she's got the most giving heart, and she's always been a giver, and she's taken Xtreme Recognition to a whole new level simply because of the way that she has extreme giving. She's the president. It's a certified woman-owned business. And you ask her about her success and why her numbers are so much higher during the pandemic and after the pandemic than other companies in our industry. And she'll tell you it's because of Jesus, but because we give above and beyond. And I might say it backwards. So help me if I say it backwards. We give on the gross, not the net. Am I saying that right?
Yep. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
So, and that, to a lot of people, that's different. That's not how well, wait a minute. That's a lot of money. And as soon as we started to do that, things just happened. And we put together a nonprofit during this time, XR Outfitters. So I'm passionate about hunting and fishing. And the more you get to know me, Eric, we'll have to get you in the boat one of these days. But I love to take people out, whether they're a wounded warrior, whether they're just someone that just needs a boost in life, someone that needs just to be picked up. Hey, let's go hunt, let's go fish, let's get away. And so we put that nonprofit together. During this time, my wife and my daughter opened up Jesus Changes Everything apparel. It's online. And, the other thing that we did is I love the cattle business. We put together a small, cattle company, KD Cattle Company. So all that was during the pandemic. I mean, who does that? But again, and we didn't do it. I didn't, push to do this to say, hey, look what I've done. Look what we did here. It's just been something on my heart. Yeah. And something that God's been moving on me is I know you have to wait on the Lord. I get that, but I don't want to be that person that waits on the Lord. Next thing you know, I'm 70 years old and I'm still waiting on the Lord. And you look back at those situations and I think sometimes maybe he's already told you to step out.
Yep.
And it's time we step out of that boat and we start doing this, to be doers. Get it done. Let's go.
I had a mentor of mine a number of years ago who looked at me and made the comment. He said, God is a God of green light. So if you feel like God's telling you to do something, he won't let you intentionally head towards harm. So if you'll pay attention and listen to him, you'll get the green light. If he tells you, you'll get a red light if you're supposed to stop. But I loved what you just said, because so many times, it's easy to just sit back. It's like, well, I'm just waiting for God to tell me what to do. And he's waiting on us to act.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. You
also just said something earlier. You said it without saying it, but it really was what kept jumping into my mind that you were talking about was, so many times, especially, I think men are guilty of this more than women, but what we love to do is compartmentalize our lives. So here's my work life, and here's my family life, and here's my spiritual life. And these things are all independent boxes that I go in and out of. And what I really kind of hear that your true success is really, from a kingdom standpoint, from kingdom success, is this being the Redefining Success podcast, your real success has come in letting go of this compartmentalization and realizing everything is interconnected.
Eric, for me, I have to. I did. It's like you walk and you walk into church and into the four walls of the church, and you're this, raising your hands, praising the Lord, and then as soon as you're out the door, you're living this totally different life. You're frustrated, you're angry, you're dealing with all these other problems, and it's like, well, what happened to the guy that that everyone looks up to, and where's that guy at? And it's like I'm tired of phoniness. I'm tired of putting on the mask, and it's just time to be real. The Word of God, Eric, it's either we're going to believe it from start to finish, or nothing. Nothing. It's either all real or nothing is real. Yeah. And that's the way I'm living my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had people who've looked at me that like I'm crazy, but what I hear you saying, it sounds like you and I are on the same point, which is like, well, what if science doesn't agree with the Bible? Or what if, what I've seen doesn't agree? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to kind of trust God's word, because man seems to make mistakes over and over and over again with what they perceive. And God has always been right.
Yep. Yep. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, that's your foundation. You've got to start somewhere, right? It's got, where does that truth? It goes right back to the Word of God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think what I'm amazed by in hearing your story, so we're in the middle of the pandemic and you start sensing just, most people are trying to protect or figure out what am I supposed to do? And you and your family are stepping out into new thing after new thing after what? Here's probably the biggest question too, because this Ignite Christian Business Conference starts in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, last year, so it was kind of the end of it. Okay. It was at the tail end, but that's what was stirring in my heart is because a good friend of mine, Cap Chatfield, him and I went out, and actually it was so fun. You would have loved this, Eric. We went out and I started calling some of my friends that were business owners. And here's what I realized, that and a lot of them are believers, but I couldn't believe the difference, Eric, between one call versus the next call. You'd call one guy and he going, Kraig, it's tough. But I'm not giving up. I'm fighting the good fight. And, you pray with him on the phone. The next guy you call up and he's done. He's devastated. It's like, dude, you haven't even lasted a week. Yeah. It's like, where does that fight go? And how does it leave us so soon? And I wanted to be able to reach out, and I wanted to be able to get together with as many business owners, Christian business owners, as I possibly could. And Cap and I actually went around and went to the different businesses. And we went to one that was I think it was an insurance company, an agency, and he had hundreds of cubicles, and you remember it. I mean, it was just this dead silence, and we sat in his office looking out at those cubicles totally empty, and prayed over him, prayed over his business. And I loved it. I loved doing that. And it was just during those times, it was kind of funny, Eric, because he was videotaping, my buddy's videotaping the whole time. And here he realized that it wasn't working the whole time. It was like 2 or 3 days worth of videos, and none of it even turned out. So it was kind of funny, but we just kind of thought, well, maybe it's something we weren't supposed to show. And it was just something we were supposed to do. Yep. And it was so hard. It just stirred in me that people need Christ. And you take away all the stuff that we as men have built to well, if this happens, then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And none of it, this business strategy, this business planning, this business success, none of it had Jesus in it. None of it. And you take all that stuff away and you don't have anything. But if you built it on the solid rock of Jesus, it was night and day. And Eric, don't get me wrong. I there was probably a week, maybe 2 weeks that it was, I was, I was a little worried, and I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do here? And one of the things that my wife and I, through the business and personally, there's a lot of ministries that we give to. There's a lot of different things that we were giving to. You know how it comes out every month, and on top of that, you have your tithe and your giving and stuff like that. And we both looked at each other and said, you know what, we need to shut those off. Oh yeah, I need to shut them off, and we'll turn them back on once things get ready. And we didn't say anything, but the next day, it was the very next day, we both looked at each other and says, we're not supposed to shut anything off. We're supposed to continue to give. And one of our accounts here in Omaha, I mean, you would know who they were. They were the first companies here in Omaha and really in the Midwest as a big company to actually shut their doors. And it was just like the shock. That's when you knew, hey, something's going on here, because these guys are sending their people home. And that's a big account of ours. And everything that they did was shut down. And God gave us new ideas. He gave us new doors to walk through. And, again, Eric, through this whole thing, we just didn't maintain, we grew. And we didn't grow by selling the PPE stuff, the mask and all the stuff that didn't work anyway. We hardly sold any of that. It was just some of the new ways that we were doing things. And it was just, people will ask, non-believers will say, so how did you do it, Kraig? We want this strategy. That's Jesus. We had nothing. It had nothing to do with me. Had nothing to do with my wife. It's Jesus.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And a lot of people, it's like, they're ready to write down this big strategy, this big knowledge thing that they're going to get, glean from this. And it's Jesus.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. And I can take zero credit for it.
I don't know how familiar you are with this. Do you know R.G. Letourneau? Do you know that name?
Yes, I do. I know that name.
Yeah. So one of the things you keep talking about that I love is R.G. Letourneau. If you don't know the story, I'm going to tell it just really quick, because he owned an earth moving equipment company back before Caterpillar and everything really existed. And he gave away 90% of his business. Yeah. And he kept giving away, and he kept getting wealthier. And they asked him the question. They were like, RG, what is happening? And he goes, I don't know. He said, I shovel it out, and God shovels it back in, and God just has a bigger shovel.
There you go. Oh, I love that. That is awesome.
And that sounds like a lot of what you've just experienced, because the only way for God to shovel it back in is the obedience and the discipline of being willing to shovel it out, because you and your wife could have said, hey, we're just going to cut off until this pandemic's over. And who knows how the story would be different, because from a world standpoint, a typical worldly success standpoint would say, yeah, hey, you need to be cutting back.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not what you did.
Not at all.
Were you ever nervous?
There were times, and again, my pastor, I'm going to call him out by name, Hank Kuhneman. And he's a prophetic voice. Him and his wife is Pastor Brenda Kuhneman, and they'll have words of prophecy that, Eric, it's so spot on. It's so right on. It's mind boggling. Yeah. And I don't know how a non-believer could comprehend some of the things that he says, some of the things that he prophesies. But as a believer, you're just going, oh my gosh. But he has said some things in my life that have just rocked my world, and I've stood on that word.
Yeah.
And so the church was actually shut down for, I want to say it was like 3 weeks, where everything was online.
Yep.
And he's a funny guy to begin with. And so he's doing this online church service, and it's the only people in the church are his wife and a few of the other, people on staff, and it was just like, it was almost comical, because he's such an exciting pastor, preacher, prophet, and it's like he just goes for it, and there's nobody there, and you'd hear his wife clapping in the background. It's like, I just felt for the guy, and there was this one service, my wife and I are just sitting in our lounger chairs on a Sunday morning watching this. And all of a sudden he puts up these chairs, and I can't remember how many chairs he puts up, like 6 chairs. And he comes to the first 2 chairs, and he's prophesying over this one couple. Just, there's no one obviously in the chair, so I was like, I don't know how he thinks of this stuff. And obviously it is God.
Right.
And so he comes to the next 2 chairs, and he looks at that camera and says, Kraig and Desiree. And it's like, we just both like, oh my gosh, what?
Yeah.
And he says, Xtreme Recognition, be recognized, and money miracles. And he just goes on and on and on with this stuff. And it was just unbelievable, the things that he was prophesying over, not just us, but our business.
Yeah.
And it was probably a week later, I'm going through a frustrating time. And I remember my daughter, bless her heart, she sends me that prophecy, because I was just going, it was just, there are days that you're having great days, and the next day you're just kind of going through some rough stuff and trying to get people to figure things out. And she sends me that prophecy again, just for me to hear it. And it was just something I needed to hear. And I just said, I'm standing on this. I'm believing. I'm not giving up. I'm not looking back. I'm not looking to the right, to the left. I'm looking right at Christ. And that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
And so, yes, at the very beginning, there were some times where, I guess doubt, it wasn't doubt, it was fear.
Sure.
Fear sets in, the what ifs. And I just said, no, I'm not. And my wife is solid. She's solid. It's like, what are you thinking that for? It's like, well, okay, I'm human. And, it's just, so those are the people that I've had the advantage of having in my life.
Yeah.
My loving wife that believes in me, believes that, we're going to make this, and having the pastor that we have, the pastors that we have in our life. It's solid. It's just, it's solid.
I've got a comment on your overall situation and your experience there, only because I was raised in a pretty traditional, it was Church of Christ is what I was raised in, which would have, if I'd stayed inside of that, Kraig, I'd be looking at you right now being like, oh, that prophecy, hocus pocus, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And I just, for those of you out there who are maybe sensing that a little bit in your spirit, I'm going to challenge you just a little bit. I am going to challenge you a lot, because I've had some experiences in my life of having prophecy spoken over me. And here's the best way that I would say it. Were you ever, a kid, and someone just said, man, hey, good job, or I believe in you, you can do it. And that's all at the end of the day is prophecy is. It's a word through someone else of God saying, I believe in you and you can do it.
Yeah.
And when you have an opportunity to be around something like that, when you have the opportunity to be exposed to something like that, I'll tell you 2 things is, 1, hold on to it. And number 2, don't let it go, meaning document it in some way. And so I don't know what you do, Kraig, but I mean, like, I have a majority of the prophecies that have been spoken over me that I've written down and then read into an audio note that I play back to myself almost every single morning as a reminder of what God has said. Because when you go into, seasons of doubt or fear, God hasn't changed.
Yep.
But we've got to have something to renew our minds.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know if you realize that or not, Eric, but he's actually, him and his wife are actually going to be one of the keynote speakers like you at the Ignite conference.
That's going to
So,
be exciting.
yeah, it is. It is.
I look forward to
It
meeting
is.
Hank then. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. That is fantastic. Hey, as you've kind of been running Xtreme Recognition, especially kind of now, so, we did maybe a different season, inflation and everything else. But if you were going to just look back on the last 2 to 3 years, you and your wife together, and maybe if she was here, what would you say maybe the greatest lesson God taught you coming through that and out of that, and kind of where you sit today? If you just look back and go, wow, that was the big thing we learned about God during that time period.
Never give up.
Mm.
Just never give up, and keep your eyes focused. And because when you get your eyes off of, the news, you look at the news, and I don't care who you're listening to, it's negative.
Yep.
And and then you get into the Word of God, and it's like, so shortly after the pandemic hit, Eric, we decided we're shutting the cable off. It had nothing to do with money. It was just, I'm tired of this.
Yep.
And so that forced us, number one, not to even listen to CNN or Fox or any of them. And we hang around people, like-minded people, and people that can lift each other up, encourage each other, and even believers. I mean, you look at Eric's, I mean, the church, someone falls, and the church hasn't been very good in the past about stopping and picking somebody else, picking them up.
Yep.
And we've learned to do that. We've learned to pick those people up and dust them off. God says they're worthy. God says they're worth it. Yep. And Jesus died for them.
Yep.
And let's get them back on track. Let's stop and pick up the wounded. The Marine Corps, that we always picked up our wounded.
Yeah.
We never left anyone behind. And yet you get into the real world, and as believers, we leave people behind.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do that.
And
I've just learned to never give up. Never give up. He's given this. He's put this in my heart. He's going to see us through, and he's given us the faith to do it.
So, Kraig, we're gonna put information on the conference inside the show notes.
Beautiful.
And make sure this gets out. It's July 27th or 28th and 29th.
Yep.
In Omaha, Nebraska. What else do people who are listening need to know other than they need to be there? I mean, if you were give a commercial for the event, like who needs to be there, who needs to show up, and kind of registration and website, and give all of that if you could.
Yeah. So Eric, you froze, and I don't know if so now a button just came up and says my internet connection is unstable. So
you're good.
So what'd you tell me to say then?
Yeah. So show the conference off.
Oh, okay.
Could. So who should be attending? Where do they go to register? Who else kind of going to be speaking, and kind of and what's the event kind of look like? Give us a kind of an overview of the event.
So it's going to be the 28th, 29th of July here in Omaha, Nebraska. And go to ignite-cb, like Christian business.com, and everything is there for you. The speakers are going to be there. Eric, you're going to be one of our special guests as well, our keynote speakers. And we've got Hank and Brenda Kuhneman, Lance Wollnow, Kevin Jessup, some great men of God, some great business owners, just some fantastic business owners, those people that are entrepreneurs. And those are the people that really need to be going. And it's more than just business owners, folks. It is Christian business owners, but the entrepreneur. If God's given you that desire in your heart to do something, this is something you need to go to. Kingdom-minded people, leaders. If you find yourself a leader in your community, you need to be at this event. And this will be something. The Isaacs for special music, the Isaacs and Jasmine Brady are going to be there. And I'm telling you, there's going to be some great music. It's going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah. We've
got some special speakers that are going to be there. Just some younger people, younger generation people that are just starting out. And we're going to hear from a lot. It's going to be a great time. We had a great time last year, and we're just doubled it this year.
That's wow. So it begins, if I remember correctly, like on Thursday night and then goes all day Friday, or
Thursday night, and then it will be all day Friday. So the doors will, I think it's at 5:30, Eric, on Thursday night that it starts. And then on Friday, I think the doors open at 8 and everything's going to start at 9 and probably go till about 4 o'clock on Friday night. And again, it's going to be jam packed. There's a lot of great speakers. You don't want to miss this. It's only $50. Hey, we're giving you lunch on Friday.
Wow.
So you know, it's again, we want you there, and we want you to tell others about it, because I think you're going to walk away from this event, because I don't want to go to another event, let alone host another event.
Right.
I want to create something that's you're going to walk away from. I guarantee you're going to say, I have a greater hunger for Jesus Christ, and I want Jesus in my workplace. And there's going to be some things. There's going to be maybe it's a marketing plan, maybe it's a different strategy that you're going to be able to implement into your business that week. That's what excites me, because again, we want to change our nation. Look at leadership. Yeah. And that's where it's going to start. That's what's going to change our nation back.
Well, as Kraig said, I'm going to actually be doing a keynote on redefining success and moving from what I call sandcastles to kingdom.
Awesome.
And how the world is tempting us into building really beautiful sandcastles that get washed away versus building God's kingdom. And so
looking forward to that.
Yeah, I could not be more excited about that opportunity. Kraig, before we go, about always my last question here: in 3 generations, what do you hope your great grandchildren remember about you?
Wow. That grandpa was a man of integrity, and he was a doer. He went for it.
Yeah. Nehemiah, huh?
Nehemiah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So ignite-cb.com for the conference.
Yep.
Kraig, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or just want to follow the work that you're doing, what's the best way to do that? Is it the Ignite-CB, or is there other ways that are best to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, my email is Kraig, and it's with a K, so it's KRAIG at xrgifts.com is really the best way to get a hold of me. And again, everything is on there as well. So yeah.
And we did not get a chance. So Xtreme Recognition, Xtreme Recognition.com is also, if you're looking for promotional products or things like that, or want to kind of check out more of what Kraig and his wife are doing, that's where you can do that. Kraig, thank you for joining me today.
Eric, it's been fun. And Eric, you think of our relationship, man. I mean, we've never met.
Not face to face, no.
Yeah. So it's like every time we're together, it's like we're buddies, and we've got some, you know, like we've been together hunting or fishing or doing something, man. And it's like, I'm excited to be able to get together with you in person here just in a couple months away. Absolutely. But I love seeing Jesus all over you, man.
Thank you.
It's cool. And I love what you're doing.
All right. Thank you so much, Kraig. Thank you everyone for being with us today. I'll be with you again next week. God bless you. Have a great week.